Hi, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how you can create your own Coca-Cola can. Let's jump right in. Press Shift A, Mesh, and add a cylinder. Press G, Z, and 1 to move it up. Press Tab to go into edit mode. Press S and Z and maybe type 1.5. This might be a tiny bit high. Press S and Z and we'll scale it down just a bit on the Z axis. Yeah, I think that looks great. Then we'll press Ctrl R and we'll add a loop cut in the middle. Press right click to confirm and then press Ctrl B and then we'll bevel it. And I think we'll place the bevel right there. I am going to scale it up just a tiny bit more on the Z axis. Now press 3 to go into face select. Select the top face, hold shift, select the bottom face, press S and shift Z, and we'll scale it down on the X and the Y axis. There, that looks like a nice shape. We can always adjust it later. Now we'll select the bottom face, and then we'll press E and hit click to confirm, and then we'll press S, shift Z, and we'll scale it up just a tiny bit. And then we'll press E to extrude it down. And then we'll press I, we'll inset it. And we'll press E to extrude it up. And then we'll inset it just a tiny bit twice. Like that. Okay, that's great. Then we'll go to our top. And we'll do the same. We'll press E to extrude. Right click to confirm. S and Shift Z. We'll scale it up just a tiny bit. And then with E, we'll extrude it up. And then with I, we inset it. And then E will extrude it down. And now with I, we can inset it once, twice, and then 3 times. And then here, I want you to press numpad 7 to go in top view. Press 1 to go into verge select. And then press Shift H to hide everything but our selection. Now we're going to go ahead and play with this shape a tiny bit. We'll start off by pressing S and X and scale it down on the X axis. And then we'll select just this bottom half and we'll press S and Y. And we'll scale it down on the Y axis. And then with G and Y we can move it up a tiny bit. And then we kind of have an egg shape, which is perfect. If you now press Alt H, we'll get our whole shape back. We can press 3 to go into face select. And we'll select the egg shape we just made. And then I'm going to press S and Shift Z and I'm going to scale it down just a tiny bit and maybe scale it up a bit on the Y axis. And then now with G and Y, I'll move it down to the side of our can. Somewhere around there, maybe S and X, make it a tiny bit wider. And I think that looks great. And now I'll go ahead and we'll press E. And we'll extrude it down somewhere right there. And then with I, we'll inset it once, twice, and a 3rd time. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing. So numpad 7 to go into top view, Shift H to hide everything. Press 1 to go into verge select. Select just this top vert here. And then with this icon or pressing O, we can activate proportional editing. And then we'll press G and Y, and with our scroll wheel, we can adjust the size of our editing, for proportional editing. And we'll move it down, and we'll kind of create like this smiley shape. There, nothing too crazy. There, I think that looks good. Then we can press Alt H to show the rest of our object again. Press 3 to go into face select. Select this shape here. And we're just gonna slightly extrude it up with E. And then we're going to press I and insert it twice. There we go. And that is a big part of our can. Now we're going to add a subdivision modifier to our can. So we can press Ctrl 3 and we'll add a subdivision modifier. This is going to mess up our shape a tiny bit, but we're going to fix that with some loop cuts. So we'll go and start in the bottom. I want to, with Ctrl R, add a loop cut right here. In the bottom, I'm going to add one here. And then when this edge is still selected, I'll press Ctrl B and I'll bevel it so they're both a bit more to the sides. And then I'm gonna add a loop cut right there and move it all the way down, and then add one there, press Ctrl B and do the same as before. Like that, there we go, and then you can kind of see that we're getting our shape back. Now I want to add a loop cut right there, move it up just a tiny bit. We do kind of want to keep this curvature here, so we'll add a loop cut somewhere here, not too close to the edges, just so we kind of keep this nice smooth curve. Cans usually have right there, and they have the same up here, so we'll kind of move them close, but not too close. There, that's a nice curve. And then we'll add another one here, move it all the way up, and then here we'll add one, right click to confirm, Ctrl B, bevel it, and then we'll do the same right here, add a loop cut, and we'll press Ctrl B, and we'll bevel it right there. And now on the inside I want a loop cut, and I'll move one up right there. And that's our shape, and we can press right click and we'll shade it auto smooth. I might even want to kind of scale this edge a tiny bit. So if we go into edit mode in face select with Alt, select this loop of faces, then we can go to select more or less, select more, and then press S before. Press O first to turn off proportional editing, press S, Shift Z, and we'll just scale it up a tiny bit. I wanted it to be a tiny bit bigger there. I think that looks great. Okay, then we'll select our shape. We'll go into edit mode, and then we'll select let's go ahead and go and select all of this. So we'll go click this face, select more, less, select more, and then with Shift R, we can redo our last action, and we can kind of select all of these faces. And then with Shift D and Z, we make a duplicate and we'll move it up. Now if we press P and we separate it by selection, it creates its own object right there. So if we now press Tab and we leave edit mode, we can now just click on this item, press Tab, and we just edit this, and we'll go here into top select, and then we'll select this face again, and we'll just go to select more or less again, select more, and then I kind of want to just click there, and then we'll go ahead and dissolve the faces, just so we have this shape right here. And then we'll go ahead and we'll press I to inset. Then we'll inset it maybe something like that. Now we can press X and F to delete the face in the middle. And now I'll go press 2 to go into edge select. And then I'll select this edge, and then with F, we'll fill that. And now we can maybe select all. Press S and X, it will scale it down a bit in the X-axis, like that. Okay, I think that looks good. Now we'll press R, Z 180 to rotate it, and then we'll, in edit mode, press A to select all, and then we'll extrude it up. There we go, and then we can add some loop cuts right there, maybe even one there. There we go. And now we can press G and Z, and we can kind of move that down. Now if we go into right view, which is a numpad 3, we can kind of see our object from the side. Press right click, set origin, and then origin to geometry. And then with R, we can kind of rotate it up a bit, so we'll get a bit of a shadow later on this as well. Okay, now we'll press Shift A, mesh, and we'll add a cylinder, G and Z to move it up, and we scale this all the way down and also on the Z axis. And then go into face select with pressing 3, select the top face, press I to inset, and then E to extrude it up. Now press 2 to go into edge select. Select this top edge, hold shift and alt and select all of these edges, and then with Control B we'll bevel it, and then with your scroll wheel add 2 extra bevels. And then we can press Control 2, and then we want to select the bottom face and inset it just a few times. There we go. We'll shade auto smooth that, and now we'll move it down. And then now we can adjust the shape a tiny bit more, so we'll go into top view and I'll scale it down just a tiny bit, and then move it a bit more there, and then move the whole thing right there. There we go. Okay, I think that looks nice. Now I'm gonna go ahead and select the 2 objects we made by holding shift and then the can last, and then we can press Ctrl J to join it all, and then we just have one object, and we'll call this object the can. And that's perfect. Then we'll go ahead and start adding our materials. So for that we'll go ahead and we'll go to the shading tab. Make sure you're in material preview by pressing Z to open your shading menu and click material preview. Select the can, add a new material. We'll change the name of this material to metal, and then very easily we'll change it to metallic to 1 and our roughness to 0.3. That's it for the metal. Now we'll go ahead and add our texture to the can here. So select the can, press tab to go into edit mode. Make sure you're in face select, and then alt click on one of the edges. So we select the whole loop. Then we can go into select, and then we'll go to more or less, select more, and then with Shift R we can select the all the sides of the can, and then in our material tab we can add a material slot right there, and then we can click new material and we can assign it, and then we can call this maybe just texture. And then for our texture we want to go ahead and add a image texture right there, which we will connect to the base color. I've added a link to our descriptions for the texture I'm using. You can use any texture you want. I just use the Coca-Cola one, but you're free to change it to anything you want. And then there is our label. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and change this to metallic, and then our roughness will be 0.3 as well. So now we'll want to adjust the sizing a bit, because as we can see it's all a bit too big, so we can go to UV editing for that. And then here we can see our texture. So now we'll go ahead and we'll alt click this face again, this loop, and then once again we'll select more and less, Shift R to redo, and then now here we have our texture. So we can select everything here, and then we have to scale it up. So press S and Y, and then we'll scale it up just so it fits our whole texture. And there we go. I'm pretty satisfied with how that looks. And now we can go and look around. I think this bottle is a bit too wide, so press S and X. And then we'll scale that up, just so we feel like the bottle looks decent. And then we'll G and X, I'll move it to the side right there. And then just make sure to look around the bottle and see that everything looks fine. Some textures may be repeating itself, like right here, but since I'm just planning to use this side of the can, that's okay. Else you can find maybe a texture that will fit the whole can, but this is good enough for what we're doing. So now we can go back to our layout, and then we'll add material preview here, and then there's the beginning of our can. Starting to look good. Now I want to go ahead and I want to maybe select everything and then scale it just a tiny bit down on the X and Y axis. There we go. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and add the condensation, which will basically just be water drops on the outside of it. So we'll add a water material and then we'll add some geometry nodes. We'll start by pressing Shift A, mesh, and we'll add a plane. With the plane selected, we'll go into our shading tab and then we'll press new. And then we'll call this water. All we have to do is delete the principal BSDF. So press X while selecting it and press Shift A and we'll search for the glass BSDF and we'll connect that to our surface. Now we can change the roughness to 0.1 and the IOR to 1.333. Okay, that's it for the water texture. Now we're going to play around with some geometry nodes. So we'll go to our geometry nodes tab and we'll add a new. Okay, so here we can delete the group import by selecting it and pressing X. And then we'll start by adding an object info. And then we can go ahead and connect that geometry to geometry. And our object info is going to be arcan. And we'll make it relative. Now we'll go ahead and we'll add a distribute points on faces. And you can add that in the middle right there. And then here we can see all small cubes on our can, which will turn into some random drops. The density is a bit low now. You could probably change it to like 100, but we'll adjust that later. So for now, I want to go ahead and add a UV sphere right there. And I want to add a transform geometry and we'll connect the mesh to the geometry. And now we'll go ahead and add an instance on points. And we'll add that to the middle right here. And then our transform geometry goes to instance. There we go. And now we can see that we have a whole lot of UV spheres on here. We can change the radius to maybe something like 0.2 or 0.1 to start off with. But we're going to go ahead and change the scaling of it some more later. So we'll go ahead and add a random value. We'll add that here and we'll connect that value to the scaling of our object. So now we can set a min and a max scaling size for our objects. The min is perfect at 1, at 0. We'll just change the max to maybe 0.2. Yeah, maybe a tiny bit bigger could be nice. There, 0.3. I think this looks pretty good. And we can still play around with that later, of course. Let's go ahead and add some styling to our spheres. We'll start off by adding a realize instances and connect that right after the instance point. We want to shade it smooth. And then we want to add our water material to them. And then here with material, we can select water. And there we can see it's looking great. I'm going to go ahead and change the scaling up a tiny bit on the z-axis so they look a bit more like drops. So it's like 1.4. Yeah, that looks nice. And I'm actually, it might be a tiny bit too dense. Maybe 90 is better. But yeah, you can make as many drops as you want, of course. I'm fairly satisfied with this. So that's it for the drops. We can change the plane and call them drops. And then now we'll go back to our layout. And then from here on, we're going to go ahead and select everything. And then press Shift S, selection to cursor, so it's centered in the middle. Then we'll press numpad 1 to go into front view. And then Shift A, and we'll add a camera. Press G and Y, and we'll move our camera back. And then with numpad 0, we'll go into camera view. And with G and Z twice, we can move our camera backwards and forwards. And then we just want to fit the can in there like that. Now I'll select everything and then press R to rotate it. R and Z to rotate it again, and you can press R twice to rotate it some more. There, and I think that looks, that's a nice rotation. And to move it a tiny bit down, it's perfect. Now we'll add a background, so press Shift A, Mesh, and we'll add a plane. Press RX90 to rotate it, and then with G and Y, we can move it backwards a bit. Press Tab to go into edit mode, and then with S, we'll scale it up, and then SX, scale it up some more, just so it covers our background for the camera view. Our background, of course, also needs a material, so we'll select the background. We'll go to Enter Material tab, add a new material. We'll call that background, and then we'll change our base color to DF8181. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into render options. I'm going to change my engine to cycles, device to GPU compute, and then we'll change the samples to 48 for now. Then press Z, we'll go into rendered view, and then we'll go ahead and start adding some light. So press Shift A, light, and we'll add an area light, and we'll press G and Z, and we'll move it up a whole lot. And then in our data settings for the lamp, maybe we change the power to 200. We'll change the shape to disk and the size to 3. Just so maybe to 50. And now I think I want to go ahead and move my background a tiny bit backwards because it's picking up way too much light from the lamp. And then I'll scale it up so it covers it again. I just didn't want it to catch all the light because we're going to add our own lighting to the background. Now I want to add a light that shines on it from the side right there. So before doing that, I'll press my period and change my pivot point to 3D cursor. Then we'll press Shift A and add another area light. Press G and Z, and we'll move that up. And then we can go and press RX70 maybe, and then numpad 7 to go into top view. And then we can just press R and we'll rotate it so it shines it on the side of the can. Now here we want to change the shape to disk, maybe change the size to 2. And then numpad 0 to go back into camera view. And then maybe change the watt to 100. Yeah, that looks fine. Now with this lamp, with this light selected, we'll press Shift D, RZ 120 to turn it around. And then now we can press R and X twice. We kind of want to move it down a tiny bit. And then press G and Z twice. And we can move it just backwards, just so it's a bit of a weaker side light. There, I think that looks great. Now I'm going to go and add a backlight to it, so we kind of have like this small rim light on the object. So if you press Shift A, light, and we'll add another area light. Press RX90 minus to rotate it towards the camera, GY, and we'll move it behind the can. And then from camera view, we can increase the size so it covers the whole can. And then we can change the power to 300 maybe. It might seem a bit strong, but we can always make it a bit weaker later. Gonna slightly adjust the color. Make it a tiny bit red, orangish, yellow. FFCC-B8 is the color I'm going with. And then now I want to go ahead and add a light to our background. So press Shift A, light, and add an area light. Press RX90 to rotate it. G and Y to move it towards the background. We'll change the size to 2, shape to disk, and then the power could be 500. And then we see if it's too strong. It might be a bit too strong. G and Y, I'm going to move it a bit closer. Maybe change the power to 400, just so it adds a nice gradient to our background, but isn't too powerful. Maybe something like this, and then we could play around even with giving it kind of like a color there. I think that looks pretty nice. Now if we go ahead and change our world color, so we go to the world tab here, and we'll change the color to 7F5451. We can kind of see it popping, and then here we can see that it looks really good. Another thing I want to do is go to the render settings, go to color management, and we'll change our contrast to medium high contrast to really give it that contrasty feeling. And there, it really pops. I'm thinking about maybe giving this a tiny bit of a softer red color so it doesn't distract too much from our object. There, I think that is great. And now we can just go ahead and go to render settings, and we'll change our render samples to maybe, but could work, 2048 might be a nice size. And then all you have to go do is render. Thanks for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Are you looking to level up your Blender skills? Check out my other tutorials for more tips and tricks. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And when you share your masterpiece on Instagram, don't forget to tag me so I can see your amazing work. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. See you soon.